All right, Lauren, thank you so much. And also thanks to your team at the New England PGA section for your partnership with us. Fantastic to work with you guys now over a number of seasons. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Bodo Sieber, the CEO of Tagmarshal. I am a regular speaker at Golf Inc. and with the NGCOA and at PGA education sessions. So I hope I've got a few insightful items to share with you. I'm also, I was recently appointed as an advisory board member of the University of California Design Thinking Executive Program, which I'm very excited about sharing some of my experience with them. And today, Lauren has indicated what we're looking to talk to. I have some good news to share with you from a recent NGCOA event, and that's not a surprise to you, numbers are up, right? As you know, through COVID, has been a gift to the industry. However, what's really interesting is that the number of off-course players in the US has never been this high. And we're talking almost as many off-course only players as there are on-course only players. The importance of this, and that's why I wanted to share with you, is that your average age here is lower, right? 30 versus 45. The female proportion is higher, non-white proportion is higher, and still, and this is really interesting, the on-course only 100K plus income brackets 43%, and the off-course only, and obviously this is your top golfs and so on, is 41%. So it's very similar. So this is a fantastic audience that we have an opportunity as the industry to attract onto our golf courses. But we have to think about how we do this, right? So we want to be inclusive, we want to be inviting, and we need to also welcome those newbies, if you will, while they have a club in their hand and they love top golf for those experiences. It's very, very daunting to come out onto a golf course. And pace of play, what we want to talk about today, certainly has a role to play in creating a playing field that is open and accessible. So this is a huge opportunity for us. Let's keep it in mind, and also celebrate for a moment how this has grown over the last couple of years. It wasn't always like this. Prior to 2019, there was a slow creep decline. So this is an amazing opportunity. In terms of Tagmarshal, we are a golf course optimization system. We focus on anything that moves on a golf course in terms of tracking with GPS, and our specific focus and specialty is optimizing and automating pace and flow of play management. We work with quite a few of the top 100. A lot of the names here are very familiar to you, but most of our clubs, and it's close to 500 now, are really middle of the road golf courses that are all solving the same problems, and they may have a staffing contingent of 15 or 25, not 250 like some of those fantastic facilities that are pictured here, but they all solve the same problem, and they're all trying to do it in an efficient way that really works for them, but first and foremost also for their golfers. We're also very blessed to work with the European Tour, that is now called DP World Tour, but I can still not adjust. Makes so much more sense to call them DP European Tour, the USGA and the RNA as well, and widely connected into the industry for a couple of years. So thanks very much for joining. What I would like to do is for Lauren, if at all possible, to throw a quick poll at you. Which factors do you believe are creating exceptional player experiences? Which factors are top to the player experience according to golfers? I'm not sure, Lauren, if you can do that poll quickly.
Yep, so that poll is live. You may only be able to vote once, but if possible, we did put the option to select 3 if you can. If you're only allowed to vote once, that's okay.
Yeah, I'd love it if it's all possible for you to select what you believe are the top 3, just so I can read the room a little bit. And then hopefully we'll get some answers. So the list is course design, course conditioning, clubhouse and amenities, pace and flow of play, playing partners, who's in my group, accessibility, tee time availability, and cost and value. I am not sure if I can switch over and maybe see the poll. New poll is live, it says.
So we have 2 votes for course conditioning. 1 for course design. Yep, they're coming in a little bit. Yeah, we can only select 1.
Okay, all right. So what I can see here is course conditioning and pace and flow of play are floating to the top as according to you, the audience, in terms of these are the key experience factors, course conditioning and pace and flow of play. And of course, I am not surprised by this at all. So Lauren, I think we can drop off the poll. I think we've seen the trend here, which is great. Yeah, and this goes to a recent NGCOA. I don't know, some of you may have received this. It's quite a nice study they did. This is just 3 months ago that this was launched. And according to golf operators / owners of golf courses, they believe the top factors this season and also into next season are conditioning of the golf course. 95% think that's critical to the play experience. Welcoming attitude towards women, surprise, right? And I've shown you here they are already with the golf club in hand at the driving range. Let's get them onto the golf course. And pace of play, 84% are saying that's critical, right? Physical beauty and aesthetics of the golf course, not so different from conditioning, right? And then cost value. And funny enough, I would argue that if you do conditioning well and if there's a good flow on the golf course, that already is value, right? And that is very, very important. So further to that, the USGA also asked the golfers, what do you think are the key experience factors that make your round of golf special and memorable? And again, the top rated item here is course conditioning, and very close to that, pace and flow and the time it takes to play. In between that is who's in my group, right? That's obviously up to the golfers to manage. So that they can enjoy it themselves and hopefully take somebody's money. But here your 74% pace and flow and time is crucial to the enjoyment. Now, what's interesting, in the US, the average that a golf course would spend on conditioning is anywhere, and there's really an average between $500,000 and $3.5 million. How much are we actually spending on this item here, where it's almost as important to golfers? And certainly one doesn't go without the other. And I would challenge us that we are really underfunding this, right? It's something that we don't really want to pay much attention to. And why? Well, because it's been difficult historically. How do we even do it? So maybe today we can shed a bit of light. And people who have done that already for us, again, it's a USGA study that I believe you'll find very interesting. The USGA, obviously, as the custodians of the game, want to help operators to be at their very best so that they can serve golfers really well and attract more golfers, and especially also look after the new golfers, because the new golfers of today, if we do it well, would be our staple customers and members over the next 20, 30 years, right? So there's huge customer lifetime in doing what is important to them, right? So they went out, did a study defining the golfer experience. And this was done by Professor Christina Skunova and Eric Bray from University of Wisconsin. So here's Chris Skunova. She is not only a researcher, she is also the Director of Golf Operations at Erin Hills, famously hosted the US Open in 2017, also one of our partners. And what they did in their research, where Chris clearly wears both hats, that of a researcher, but also very closely connected to golf, they defined 1,000 touch points in a golfer experience. 1,000 touch points, that sounds crazy, but if you think about it, driving through the gate at a golf course is a touch point. Being greeted is a touch point. They're booking around online or on the phone, that's a touch point. Getting a quick starter brief, that's a touch point. All of these are touch points. And some of them delight players, are perfect delighters. This is something that makes my day. And some of them are perfect frustrators. If you look at this cycle of how a round of golf is normally experienced. It's engage. Okay, I want to go play. Where should I go? Member somewhere, then it's a no-brainer. Maybe I can make a selection out of some daily fee course I like to go to, or maybe it's a big trip with my buddies down to Banded Dunes or to Kiowa. It's that time of the year. Engage, arrive, play my round, exit. That's post-round. That is hopefully the grill and having a few drinks, and then extend is that's when the club reaches out and said, hey, thanks for visiting, we'd love to have you back, and please come back next weekend. And then we engage again, and the round goes on like this. What's important to look at, actually, this is not a good reflection of the focus of this cycle. What you actually want to do is adjust it like this, because the golf and what happens out on the golf course, this drives everything else. We would not engage, we would not arrive if it wasn't for this, right? So it has huge importance in this experience cycle, and everything else, even the post round and the extend, really is based on this. So this is the foundation of this, is what drives your business, and this is the key of to this entire experience. So I think it's important to visualize it well, and also give it this amount of attention, because also that's where most of the time gets spent, right? 4 hours, 4.5 hours, 5 hours. More time is not necessarily good, but it is a big chunk of time within this experience cycle. So what they found is that out of 1,000 touch points, there are a few that really float to the top and make people extremely happy, and there are a few that float to the bottom and make people absolutely miserable about their round of golf, right? And who would have thought that other people's speed, other people are too slow, or I perceive them as being too slow, is a top frustrator to golfers. And they will tell you all about it every single weekend when it's busy, right? Other people's speed, other people are getting in my way, the pace of play is too slow. At the same time, equally frustrating to people is corrective pace of play actions. And that is, in fact, the overall worst score out of 1,000 touch points. So corrective pace of play actions means a marshal comes over and grunts at you and says, hey, you're slow, get on with it, right? You're slow, you're holding up the play, let's go. Players hate that. They cannot stand it, and they will remember this one interaction and take it away, and they will most likely complain to their friends and not come back, right? Corrective pace of play actions don't like, other people's speed also don't like. So that's a conundrum, right? How are we going to fix it? How are we going to fix everyone's speed if we cannot come and talk to you and tell you to hurry up? And I think the golfers are giving us a hint here how they want this done, and that is the top ranking item, which is positive ranger or marshal etiquette. That is the overall top score, and it's crazy how polar this is. The overall top score in this 1,000 touch point survey is positive ranger etiquette, and that is surprising. But I believe it's because it's so rare that this actually happens, right? That it's a positive interaction. Here, green to tee design, like a smartly designed course, that ranks high. A good starter, communication, education ranks high. Green and open tees. That's again pace related, ranks high. Overall playing speed ranks high. The ranger and marshal role in itself and the ranger marshal placement rank low as well. So these are things that, if we're listening to golfers, we need to do well, and we need to do better. And there's a few things that we can do that are really quite simple. And I'm hoping that I can share with you guys today things that you can go and implement at your clubs into the new season that are really not too tricky to do. You need to do it because the golfers are telling you to do it, right? Not because you have a pace of play problem, but you have an opportunity to do this really well. And 74% of players are saying, please do this well for me, right? There is another reason why we want to do it well, because we want to be customer-led, we want to be member-led, we want to be golfer-led. They are paying our bills, right? They are driving revenue into our club, and we have to do what's right for them. So here's another study that shows if players are feeling welcome, if there's a good flow out on the course, and if they meet on-course staff, there's a higher chance of them going to the restaurant, and the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is sky high. This is really, really good. So those of you who are not familiar with the Net Promoter Score, and many of you would do post-round surveys like Players First, where this data comes from, for instance, do this really nicely. Post-round surveys, how did your round go? There's a number of metrics that you can track. And then ultimately you get an end result, and the Net Promoter Score is basically out of 10, how do you rate the service and would you recommend it to others, right? So you get asked like this all the time from airlines, car hire companies, what have you, right? Rates out of 10. And normally, if you had an experience between 5 and 6 or 4 and 6, you do absolutely nothing because it was neither fantastic nor was it bad. So you're just going to ignore it. And anything 8, 9, 10 is considered a promoter. So that is somebody says, this was great, I'll come back, I'll tell my friends about it. And anything below 4 is considered, and that's negative, right? 0 is like, I will tell everyone this was terrible, I'll never come back here. So we need to do these things well, make players feel welcome, good flow on the course, meet on-course staff. So how are we going to do all of this? It feels like we need lots of staff, right? Feeling welcome, usually a clubhouse are well staffed, on-course staff, well, how do we do it? With quite a stiff labor market as we're finding it, and also rising costs, right? So how do we do it well? And also we want to meet on-course staff for positive interactions. Remember, a corrective pace of play does not count as meeting on-course staff. That's a horrible thing. So here we're talking possibly anyone checking in with you, how's your round going, give you a bit of a playing tip or a setup tip, what have you. Obviously the beer angels, that's your your drinks cards, ladies, always very welcome out on the course. That's on-course staff. Anyone who cares out for you and assists you and guides you and helps you, that's on-course staff interactions. Okay, so we're learning that if we don't do these things well, Net Promoter Score goes down, right? So it pays to do it well, again, being customer-led. Right, so how does this now, what does this mean for flow and pace of play in practice? I put a little quote up here for you that some of you might be familiar with. Peter Drucker, he's considered the greatest management thinker of all time. That is quite a label. He's saying what gets measured gets managed. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And there's many things that you measure, like golfers measure obviously their performance. You measure your financial performance. You measure the rounds that you play, or your club plays every season. Lots of financial metrics get measured. But how do we measure the player experience other than the Net Promoter Score? And how do we do it? So a few of the items that, like I promised, that we need to consider that we can do, and please make some notes here, really straightforward, and after what we've just discussed, you won't be surprised. But what you want to do is one obvious thing. Adjust your marshal and ranger role. Adjust it. You do not want this to greet or interact with your players. A marshal ranger in the old days was somebody with a level of authority that could get players to move on, right? But this is exactly what golfers are saying they don't want. So a negative attitude, you're slow, pick it up, unfriendly encounters, and players will push back at that. And they'll always say, no, I'm not slow, it's the guys in front of me, you just came at the wrong time. Where were you half an hour ago when I was held up, and all of those things? It's always competitive. You can never win, right? And it's not engaging. It doesn't add those positive on-course interactions that players are saying they want to have. And also, what's important too, if there's no expectation set, right? Expectation might be, well, here's a golf cart that says Marshall. The expectation is, well, I'm going to get someone. So here he comes, right? But the expectation set can also be very different. It can be communicated. Today, or at our club, we're playing 4 hours 10, or we're playing 4 hours, or 4:15, or 5 hours. If you're at Erin Hills, and Erin Hills 5 hours, that's the goal time, and you'll have a fantastic experience. So it's not about everything having to be 4 hours. It has to be right in terms of your course length and the type of play that you are trying to create. And the flow is actually more important than the pace. The pace is obviously how long does it take, but the flow is how much wait time is So here's what you want to do. You want to set expectations around that. You want to use information and data where possible. So it's not based on anecdotal evidence or that one time a few years ago that somebody took out a stopwatch. You want as much accurate data as you can have. A positive, supportive approach, non-confrontational. That is absolutely key. And the obvious thing to do is you want to adjust that marshal role and give it a different name. That's the game changer #1, and it's so simple. And a lot of the clubs that we work with, they do this on day one. Okay, let's call this person a course ambassador or a player assistant. And immediately that negative marshal and ranger connotation goes out the window. So here's a course ambassador, here's a player assistant. They're here to help me, right? And then rule number 2, please never say and teach your team this, you're slow to a golfer. You're slow. If a golfer hears that, it's like you're saying you're stupid or you've got low IQ. They will not accept that. They will always push back, always, always, always. You can never win that argument, never make that point. Nobody's slow. Do not tell them. What you want to say, and there's many other ways in which you can do this, you're a bit out of position, right? You're out of position. You're supposed to be 500 yards ahead. You're supposed to be 5 minutes ahead. Let me help you get there, right? So now it's supportive. And you want visibility, and you want to treat this as an experience enhancement. Nobody wants to have that police person out there grunting at people, glaring at people. You want it an experience enhancement. And if we have data and if we have information, we do not need an authoritarian figure. We can just have somebody to support and assist, right? A player assistant, a course ambassador. So those are the 2 things. Please take that away. Change the name. And never say you're slow, say you're out of position, and it completely changes conversation. Okay, what else? There are a number of other data points that are important. You want, obviously, in terms of your efficiency and quality drivers when it comes to the player experience out on the golf course. You want consistent pace and flow. So consistency is key. Your starter and your interval accuracy is very important. If your interval is 10 minutes, you want your starter to ensure that gets adhered to, and obviously that's their job, but things need to be communicated and expectations set as well, right? So a lot of the clubs that we work with, they ensure that they have a customer journey that guarantees that players are at the tee box just a little bit ahead of time, and that they can get out exactly on time, right? Because think about it, if you have a 10-minute interval and you send out one group 2 minutes late and the next group 1 minute early, hey, we're ready to go, let's go. Now you've reduced that 10 minutes to 7 minutes. And if you do this a couple of times throughout the day, it changes, it creates issues very, very quickly. So the more you can be accurate around this with the starter, the better, and it's something that you really want them to pay attention to. Another item is hole-by-hole performance. So how does your club, your course go hole by hole? And sometimes you need to make a hole a little bit easier, make a hole a little bit, from a setup point of view, easier to play, so it doesn't take quite as much time. Or you can look at opportunities that are low cost to adjust the hole if it continuously goes over time. That are low cost, like some of the small design adjustments. If it's a non-feature like a bush, why don't we take it out? Or sometimes you need to do the counter. You may have a really quick hole that then pushes into the next hole and people have to wait on the tee box. How can we make this hole a little bit tougher so that we can buy time for the next? So you really need to get a handle on how we're going hole by hole from a flow perspective. Another opportunity is dynamic goal times. Or variable goal times. So some of you may be familiar, or you've heard of, or you're using dynamic pricing, right? Dynamic goal times is similar in that it should probably be called variable goal times. You want to start your day well. So anecdotally, and I'm going to show you that because it's very important, your first round out is quick, right? Everyone knows that. But how can we design our day so that the first few rounds out are quick and we set an expectation? We want players that want to play quick. If your normal goal time is 4:10, you can probably play your course in 3:30. Obviously, you need to prove that with data. How can we then start our day at 3:30? And how can we do that for the first 5 or 6 tee times? And then how can we stagger things up? And again, like I'll show you, because this is an important opportunity, because what you do then is you pull your day along and you're starting your day quickly, and also you're setting standards and you're getting quick players to start your day, which is what you want, right? And again, setting expectations is very important. So this is our pace, but also you can segment your day. You can say, like, our first few tee times out are quick, and we expect you to play in line with that. Are you willing to do that? Let's go. In the daily fee space, this actually can be a pricing variable, because a lot of players want that. They will pay, and the research supports that, 30 or 40% more for a really quick round. But give them that, right, and charge them for it. In the private club environment, if you know your player base, well, you assign or you open up those early tee times, not just the first one, not the first few, to players who can handle it, and then players who take their time. You move them into the later part of the day. And another item here is trackable positive staff interaction. So positive staff interactions happen out on the course, and you want to encourage those, and you want to have resources that can do that at key times of the day, certainly, and also at key moments in somebody's round of golf where possible. So these are a couple of the data points that are key to the efficiency and quality. So one of the questions is how do we know if we're doing well with our pace, right? Because it's very easy for us to say, oh, we don't have pace to play problem. We're not getting enough complaints. Yeah, it's not really a big deal here, you know. But we've all seen a big uptake in play volume, and something's got to give, right? We need to accommodate those players, lots of new players. It's not an easy space to manage, and we have an obligation to do it well. So how do we know? How can we measure it? So one of the traditional measures, and many of you would say, we have a goal time, right? That's 410 or 420 or 430 or 355, whatever. And then we'd sometimes measure average round time. And here's one such example. They play 3,300 rounds in March, Southern course. They're coming through at 4:06 versus their goal time. That looks good, right? Like we're just 6 minutes off. We want. The problem with averages is they balance out the really quick times, the early times, the twosomes. They balance out the bad stuff. With a median time, which would be much better to look at, the average is actually hiding the bad thing. Right? It's like the weather. Like early in the morning, it's really cold. Late in the evening, it's really cold. In the afternoon, it's really hot. The average temperature is actually very meaningless for a day because I have very different experiences within that. And that's exactly what happens with this data here. And let me show you that. So even though we're so close, 406, 27% of this month's play was on pace or considerably quicker, and 73% was slow and off pace. So this is the binary way to look at it. But if you dig in a bit deeper, you have on pace or fast within 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, 40 minutes and up, right? So even though we're this close, 6 minutes, the average hides all the slow play that happens. And these are not all slow players, not all, but you know what happens? The train stops when it stops, and now you have 5, 10, 8 groups that are impacted, and their round is now 20, 30 minutes slower than it should be, and they're waiting, right? At the same time, you have really quick rounds, you have your twosomes and so on, that balance things out. So how do we do this better? Because we can all agree that we want this to look much better so that the majority of our play comes through with a good flow of play. So the average round time is not your friend. We need to dig a little bit deeper. But how do we do it? And this is what a lot of golf courses look like for you as the manager. It's a big territory to try and manage, lots of variables. Players will do what players will do. Where's my play assistant, my course investor, my marshal? Where's the first group out? You can only see as far as you can see, right? It's not easy. So the traditional ways get pen and paper out. We've got a goal time for each hole, and we map things out according to a grid, but that is very resource intensive. So how can technology help? How can technology help us do that, and how can we automate some of it? Over and above some of the simple things that you want to obviously pay attention to with your existing setup. So here's what Tagmarshal does for our partners in industry. So in the part golf space, we have super bright GPS screen that's bright as an iPhone 13. That has a sort of player interface and does the usual GPS items. Then we have a classic tag that we can install in a golf cart that also keeps track of where playing groups are, and we can also track walking players. There's quite a few of the clubs in the Northeast that use that system because they run caddy programs, or they've got quite a few walkers and carts, so we can couple both. So what these units do is they send data to our system, and our system interprets that data and puts it onto a map for you. So this is literally like a Google Maps or Waze. So you can immediately see what's the live traffic out on my golf course. But where we go beyond what Google Maps or Waze shows you as a consumer is obviously we business to business. We will give you all the data that drives your back end as well. So this is your hole by hole. Our hole by hole is even broken down into tee box, fairway and greens, play time. Every single tee time gets tracked. So you've got the full overview of what's happening out on your course at any time, and also over a time period like a month or even a season. And this is really helpful. And I'll show you a bit more just now how to make better decisions around your course. Remember when we said you can only manage what you can measure? Well, here it is. This is how we do it. And obviously, our information then also gets sent back to the players so they can be self-aware and they can self-manage much better. So this is where automation comes in, which is probably a smart thing to do and to consider into the future, given where our wages and so on are going. So yeah, let's go from this to what things can look like, and this is what the system does. So we translate what happens out on the golf course into and through various algorithms and determine what are the biggest risks in terms of the traffic and the play volume out there right now at any time, any second of your play. So we know we can immediately see here green groups, they're all good to go, and then we have some groups that are bigger and they've got a color that you cannot ignore. So this one is purple, and this is your biggest problem right now. Let's understand why. So we can look at more information. Firstly, we can see who's in this group because we've got a T-sheet integration. Many of you may use 40s or Jonas or 4UP or Lightspeed or Easy Links, and so we integrate it, feeds straight through here. So you know who's out there. When did they tee off? Where are they? You can see that they are currently 6 minutes out of position. That's not faint smash just yet. The problem is their progress. The first 2 holes were fine. Hole 3, 4, 5, they're starting to get worse, and their trend is negative, right? So we have all this information within 3 seconds. I don't need to go out there and look for this problem or wait for a phone call. I know I have this on a screen, in the clubhouse, on an iPad, on my phone, on a computer, wherever you want to see it, we'll show it to you. The biggest problem, however, that this group is creating is they have a tail of 2 groups already that they're impacting. So these guys can't play how they would like to because they're already being slowed down by this group ahead. And they're early on in their run. They're only on hole 5 and their trend's negative. So this is your train that's starting to stop. And if you do not go and intervene, then they'll soon impact all these groups behind them, and that's a disaster, right? You cannot get this time back, and you'll have a lot of upset people out there. There's another group that's a bit of a problem on hole 8 here. That's group number 13, but they are not holding up anyone yet, so I can just keep an eye on this. And your player assistant has this on a tablet. They know exactly where to go. They have this conversation. Oh, hey guys, you're a bit out of position. Remember, do not say you're slow. Get on with it. You're out of position. And you can imagine what it does if we can show them this information. Hey, you're 6 minutes out. Help me get back in position. Let's play ready golf, right? And be supportive. And very often players, oh, right, I didn't realize I just lost the ball. No problem. We'll catch up, right? And this is non-confrontational. It's friendly. It's supportive, right? It's that what a course ambassador would do, and it's it's a good experience for the players. It's not the thing that they loathe. Plus, we can do this really directly. We know exactly where we need to go, right? So we're not wasting valuable resource time and hours, and we're not beating up our golf carts trying to find these problems out there, right? Okay, so the real-time line of sight that makes sense and is easy to understand is very important. Now, we spoke about the back end of things. So here's a month, right? So we can look at how's the month of July gone. There are a few days that go over. This might be a big tournament or corporate day, who knows, or it may have just been a day that went bad. We can see the target goal time at this course is 4:25. They're coming in at 4:13, and you can also see how their day runs. So this is the day starting quickly, then they've got a peak time, and then the day obviously ends quicker again. So every course has got its own curve like that, and none of them are alike. There's some patterns obviously, but it really pays to know this exactly, and I'll show you now why. Down here is this pace distribution. So this is where we're looking at who's fast out of this entire month, and how much of the play has gone 30-40 minutes over. And we can set targets around that, right? We want to obviously keep getting better, and improvement is always, if it's done right, incremental. I do not get fit by doing 1,000 push-ups today. I get fit by doing 30 push-ups every day for a month, or 33. That's also 1,000. If I do that, and if I put process in place like we're doing here, it's the sum of all of this that makes excellence. And it has to be habit, right? It has to be consistent. So here's the breakdown of the hole by holes. So hole 7 is a bit out, hole 18 is a bit out, the halfway house could be a bit quicker. We can immediately see that, and now we can make adjustments, right? Like we said earlier, sometimes you want to make a hole a bit slower to buy time for the next hole, and sometimes you can really make simple changes to speed up a hole. And especially looking at the tee box wait time, which is that is the most sensitive thing to golf. They don't want to have to wait on the tee box. But we can make these changes, simple changes with the superintendent or around setup, what have you. Sometimes surprising, like we had a golf course, they realized if we take out this one little tree, we'll save 6 minutes on this hole, and the flow improves, right? Easy adjustment. And then we run data through it and see how we're improving. And guess what happens if you shave 2 or 3 minutes or 5 or 6 holes, all of a sudden create a better flow, and that's in aggregate is 20 minutes. That's a lot. Okay, I wanted to talk to you. Oh, yeah, here. The data has helped us to gain tee times and increase our capacity, because that's the name of the game. How can we get more out of our day, especially when it matters on a Saturday morning? That is incredibly valuable to us. So that's Devin Gee from Oakmont Country Club. You can see the famous bunker line here in the background. So they're obviously overrun with guest play over and above their members. So any additional capacity that I can safely get out and ensure a great experience for everyone is worth a lot to them in revenue. It might even be worth additional members, right? Okay, so that dynamic goal time question. How does it work? So you can see here this blue line indicates the goal time that's set for certain segments of the day. So we're really staggering this up. We have introduced this at Pebble Beach and at Kiowa, for instance, where an example now, they may want to play to 4:20, but they're starting the day at 3:30 or 3:40, and really communicate this as well. So ideally, better players, repeat visitors, get them into those early times of people who really want to commit to that. And funny enough, maybe not at Pebble or at Kiowa, but at a daily fee course, it is a key pricing variable. How long is it going to take me? Can you guarantee me this time? Because if it's not under 4 hours, I cannot play, right? I've got things to do. I've got 3 kids, what have you. So how it works is, and here's the proof in the pudding. So this is a course that plays to a 4:20 target goal time. You can see it up here, and this day goes at 4:34. And there's a lot of after 8 o'clock. There's a lot of groups holding up others. You can see those pink ones, and the orange means held up. Pink means you're delaying others. And then later in the day, it speeds up a little bit again. there may be a gap or two in the field as well, which obviously helps untangle things. So this is normally what happens when you start tracking data, and virtually every hole here is playing slower than it's supposed to, and you only have a small percentage of rounds on pace. So imagine trying to gather this data manually or with some sort of spreadsheet or with lots of discipline. It's virtually impossible, and you only ever get little snapshots. So what if you had a system that does this for you automatically all the time? So here's the after. So now we've implemented these strategies that they speeds up very quickly. You can see that this group early was slow, but or out of position a few times, but we had interactions, right? There were on-course interactions tracked. So we caught these guys, and then the next groups we got them back in shape. And there's a few areas in the day where there's on-course interactions that are surgical, if you will. We don't need to look for problems all the time. We need to go to the right groups because we've got this live map that will tell us where to go. All the hole stats have corrected. Most of the holes are now on pace, and down here you can see that almost everything's on pace within 10 minutes. So this has now gone to almost 80% of on pace quicker or within 10. And the average round time as a byproduct almost is down to 4:07. So let's just go check back. So this means from 4:34 to 4:07. So that's a huge improvement, 27 minutes. Imagine what this does to your net promoter score for this period, right? So everyone here, where there's a number of people who had to wait because the train stops and the flow wasn't good and they're a bit grouchy, versus this. This is a perfect day, right? This is worked, or a perfect period. This worked really well. So what this means is that the time improvement on average for these 64 groups of golfers, around 200 players, it's 27 minutes, right? 27 minutes, you might argue, that's not so much. Well, it's a lot. To give an example, my dad always explained to me the theory of relativity in simple terms is time passes very differently if you're in front of the toilet door or behind the toilet door. So that's where these 27 minutes comes from. If I have to wait on the tee box 6 or 7 times for 2 or 3 minutes each, that is horrible. Don't want that. And so what it means is that that's an accumulative 90 hours over these 200 players. We've saved them 90 hours today to spend in your food and beverage facilities or in your pro shop, where you can obviously generate additional revenue, right? So that's 90 hours that you have of these people here that they had to spend out on the course, and they're maybe not quite as happy as you wanted them to be. So this is a lot of time that you can get people to spend money with you and a better time with you in your amenities. Also, that has a material net promoter score impact. So it's a huge improvement. And obviously the name of the game now is how can we design additional tee times out of this over and above making people happy. And that's the question. How do we save costs and how do we generate additional revenue? So with the system, we can optimize labor hours really easily, right? Because we don't need dedicated staffing. We will understand how our days go, and we may not need multiple resources paying attention all the time. It can be ad hoc out of the pro shop, which a lot of clubs do because they've got this on the big screen. Or on key days, you only do those key hours, right? 3 or 4 hours. And whether I'm paying somebody $20 for 4 hours or for 40 hours in a week, that's a big difference. Also, a lot of courses would then have player assistant / an additional role for somebody that can add lots of value to them in the pro shop or in other service areas, because they have data and they know exactly what to do, where to go, and they're briefed on how to do it well. So it's a huge time saver, and normally that's already a big sort of expense saving. Then does it work? Well, yes, it does. So here's Metropolis, you're probably familiar with, just south of you in New York. So they started on 4:09 average round time. 120 groups in a day, then that traffic goes up through that COVID period by 34%. Lots of play volume. And normally what you would expect is that with 34% more play volume, that the round times will start to creep up. But instead, the round times come down to under 4 hours, right? So with this good live management and using their data and these strategies, they've reduced it by 12 minutes. And that's certainly one additional tier of time for them. A lot of clubs like that would then start to implement these earlier fast lane golf rounds, which their members love. And actually tighten the intervals around that and get even more capacity out, which is obviously super valuable, like it is for Oakmont. So here's another example. How quickly can we improve if we take and pay close attention to these items? So this is just within a couple of weeks, basically at Cog Hill, who many of you will be familiar with. So it's 21 minutes. To them, that's worth 2 tee times, and that's worth a lot of money. Plus, everyone else is happy, right? Because we're making everyone happy with good flow of play. So it pays on both fronts. It makes every player happy, and this is literally like at many of our clubs. You can measure this as 5,000 rounds a season that are positively impacted materially. That's a lot, right? That's a lot in terms of your member management, and that's a lot in the daily fee golf space as well. And it's particularly in daily fee golf, there is one data point that is the single biggest revenue opportunity that daily fee golf has, and that is that a first-time visitor to a golf course, only 45% return, 55% do not return. They only play once, and then they disappear and go somewhere else. So if you can take 20% of that and return them 3 or 5 times in a season, that is huge in terms of the value that creates for you, right? Because you had to spend money to get them to come to you in the first place. They come once, they leave again. If they come 5 times and maybe even tell their friends, positive net promoter score, and they come back next year, that is a huge return on investment for you. And we're talking about revenue upside. So here's an example. Obviously, it's easy for an Erin Hills or Whistling Straits to make more money out of this. But what about the $50 green fee course? So here's Fieldstone in Michigan. With these strategies, they make every player happy. They are getting players from their courses down the road that compete with them and coming to them and complaining about that it's not quick enough at the other courses. And even though the car park is jammed, how do you get us around in 4:15 every single time? It's fantastic. We love it. So they are up using dynamic pricing and executing on the dynamic pricing with a fantastic experience. Their golf revenue in 2021 was up 25%, and in 2022 another 20%. So that's 45% up in the space of just 2 years. And also creating additional tee times, right? Especially when it matters, and creating additional food and beverage revenue because those additional legs through the door drive the bus, and we have more golfers that we can accommodate, and they're doing it well. Not only are they doing fast lane rounds in the morning, they're also allowing some slower segments of the day, especially for beginner golfers, right? So that, or certain days of the week, so that those people feel welcome as well, which is key because we want them there for the next couple of years. So those strategies really work. Using data and live management is really key, and having it presented to you like a Waze or Google Maps would. If you want to get from A to B, you always rely on it, right? If I take your smartphone away and say you got to use a map or guess your way around or ask and hope or listen to a traffic report, you would not do it, right? You're so used to relying on technology, and here it is. You can have it at your golf course, and it has the exact same impact, plus the back-end data that helps you work smarter. This is the end of the show. I hope you found this insightful. And if there's any questions, and I do hope that I didn't go offline at some point because I really cannot see anybody. If you have any questions, then please shout them out. Lauren, are you still with me? Did I keep us on pace? I did
Yes,
promise.
absolutely. And yes, I am. I'm still with you. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming in the chat, but I will leave it open for a minute if anybody does have any questions before I close this out.
Yeah, maybe let me just recap. So the simple things you can do is rename your Marshal Ranger to a Play Assistant / Course Investor. Very simple. And teach them to not tell people they're slow, they need to get on with it. Say it differently and be supportive. Your out of position is one of those that players can compute. And then, yeah, try and look at the opportunity that automation and technology brings here, because you are either putting a lot of effort and labor that is wasted into trying to solve this, that it's such a dynamic space, and you can do it better so that you can then spend your time and resourcing for more important aspects in your club life, and yeah, get technology to do it for you. And that's why we use technology. Like I mentioned, Google Maps and Waze, they're here to help you, and they're accurate, and it's the same. So that's probably a good analogy. One of the analogies that I think works as well is that if you've got an airplane, what if everyone had more leg space? Would that be better value? Would that be great for them? Yes. And what if we could add 2 more rows of seats? That's straight profit, straight bottom line. And that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what technology can do in this space. Any questions now, Lauren?
We did have a question come in. It's can a player log in to Tagmarshal and we can track using their GPS?
We can track using the player's GPS. The player's GPS, I'm not sure if I understand this correctly, but if maybe you need to ask the question a bit differently. Can a player log into Tagmarshal? We can track using their GPS. Okay. With our screen options, the players have this in their golf carts. So they would then get pace information that says you're on pace, or you're now a delay, or you've been held up. And then if there's a threshold reached, it would pop them a message automatically that they need to acknowledge, or obviously they can be contacted from a clubhouse with a quick note as well. So this is where you can track players and interact. Our classic system, which a lot of clubs are using as well, allows for a one-way communication where the staff has all the information at hand. Also post-round, like you have a track map of every single round that got played on a day. So anyone who comes into the clubhouse and says, this felt like 5 hours, I want to comp, this was horrible. Well, let's look at what it was really like, because very often perception becomes reality for players. And if you have data, it diffuses the situation very quickly. Yeah, data is really key to keep this non-confrontational and also keep you getting better.
You have a couple other questions that came in. Do you interface with Visage? Your data is more advanced than what they provide.
Yes, to the second portion, our data certainly is. They are really front-end driven, right? So we do not have an interface at this point, but it's something that is certainly possible. So you should ask them. Tell them you want Tagmarshal integrated, because we do have quite a few integrations, including Golf Genius. So that is something that, yeah, we've got quite a few clubs also because they want to track walkers that use our system and just put trackers into a cart, even though it has Visage, because they want to have that business backend. That's exactly what you're referring to. Yeah.
Great. And one more question. Why are golf courses going to 10 minutes?
Why are they? Well, it depends on where they came from, right? So there are a lot of courses in the past would have gone on 7 minutes and jammed up their course and caused major headache for themselves, this is not viable, obviously, or certainly not with the volume that we've been seeing. Then there's other courses that do the extreme opposite. They say, well, why don't we just do 15-minute interval? The 15-minute interval, fantastic, you have so much space, but also you have 30% less capacity, right? So 30% less players can go out and play, 30% less members can go out and play, 30% less revenue, unless you can balance it out with a massive fee hike, which is a risky thing to do. So 10 minutes is an example. Very often it's 8-9, 10, 8-9 alternate, or 8 on straight out. It really depends on the course, and every course is different. It runs differently. We're doing a nice study at the moment with Pinehurst, and we're seeing a big impact on green speeds versus pace of play. So if you're looking at the tour, and you all know how tough the tour setups are, and we all like to have a shot at players around the pace on tour, that's one of the reasons, right? So those are things that you can control, obviously, over and above the items that we discussed as key metrics.
All right.
Anyway, I wanted to, and I don't know if I did this, but Bill Carroll is our local rep in the Northeast. Big redhead guy. He's been around for quite a few years. Many of you would know him. So yeah, if you have any questions, shoot them over to me, or Lauren will connect us. We're here to help. We've got lots of case studies, or also other considerations that we can just share with you that you can take a look at if it's interesting for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bodo. This presentation was very insightful. I think everybody got a lot out of it. Just a reminder to everyone before we log off today that the section annual meeting is tomorrow morning at Renaissance at 9 a.m. So we hope to see you there. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me or Bodo. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Yep.
Thanks, Lauren. Send my regards to Mike, please.
I will. Thanks, everyone.